So, hello everyone, and welcome to my little talk about emotional eating for today. So, as we are ready to start, if you have any issues with hearing me, just let the host know, and they'll be able to sort it out for you. Okay, so why or what can I eat? This is the question. Why do we eat? So we bite into it, we chew it, we taste it, we swallow it. Everything is delicious. It's such an amazing experience. A piece of chocolate can make the feel of anxiousness go away. It makes you feel like you can deal better with sadness. Anger can even subside from your body, and your day can straight away become a little less boring. But does it really? So imagine if you could just eat all the time and be satisfied with your life, yourself, and your body. When we repress our emotions with food, the questions start. Why did I eat this? I'm sure you're familiar with the following statements. I failed again at being good. I was supposed to watch what I eat. I am terrible failure and I am fat. Why do I want to eat more? Look at myself. I am disgusting and I will always be like this. Or I will eat this, or I will eat this for the last time and I will start diet from Monday. Or it tastes so delicious. I should just finish this. And I'm sure it happened to you. It happens for everyone who struggles with weight issues. So if I can have a next slide, please. It is the vicious cycle of I eat, I feel guilty, I go on a diet, I restrict it, and I go back to eating. So why does eating become a problem? Why do we struggle to deal with emotions triggering our eating? Why can't we just eat only what our bodies need? Why do we need to go to a fridge or a cupboard when we are not hungry? Why, after a difficult conversation with someone, we want to have a piece of cake or a bag of peanuts or crisps? Why do we sometimes have to eat something straight away without being able to wait? Maybe reflect on it. Maybe it's just time, and maybe it's time for you to deal with your feelings first, and start addressing them before you reach for food. You might choose food as opposed to dealing with feelings and emotions because it is easier, and it also can be a habit. Tuning into our emotions means addressing the dark patterns, the traumas, the feelings of loneliness, upset, sadness, and disappointment that happen to you. And this behavior works because you found it works over the years. There is a lot of pleasure in eating. And of course, since we are babies, anything you experience as a baby then resulted you being served a breast or a bottle, whether it was an annoying itch or an actual hunger. So eating has its function in emotions. Food makes you happier, gives you energy boost. Endorphins distract you from what's happening. Eating soothes the heightened emotional arousal and fills up the gaps, helps us to deal with emptiness, loneliness, boredom, sadness, or anger. Can I get the next slide, please? So when it comes to emotional eating, brain chemicals are highly influential. A major chemical involved with our emotions and mood states is called serotonin. Research shows us that as we get more and more stressed out, transmission of serotonin decreases, directly affecting our emotional state, causing us to feel down and really not great in the moment. And coincidentally, when we eat high sugar, high carbohydrate foods, it leads to an increase in chemicals that help our brain release more serotonin, temporarily elevating our mood and making us feel better emotionally. Unfortunately, which is a sad thing, this feeling doesn't last very long, creating a perpetual cycle that causes us to continually crave unhealthy foods. Excuse me. The great thing, as research demonstrates, exercise, any movement, as well as other self-care techniques can also raise serotonin. So why are we reaching out for chocolate or crisps when we feel upset? We do that. What to do, I suppose, or what our brain really does. it's definitely all the brain chemicals that influence our emotions have to do, and what they do, they kind of make us want to kind of choose something, isn't it? They want us to kind of choose either a bar of chocolate, because it helps to kind of get the energy that it needs. So let's just to kind of, I suppose, to explain this easier, let's illustrate it and have a look at the, I suppose, the example of the serotonin. So if I can have the next slide, please. Okay, so picture your brain as a pinball machine. Yeah, so you have millions of neurotransmitters that are sending messages to and from each other. When your serotonin transmitters fire the signals from flippers, it sends the message throughout your brain and you feel good. That message is strongest when the feel-good ball is frenetically bouncing around in your brain, racking up tons of positive points along the way. But when you lose the ball down the chute, that is when a serotonin cells in the brain takes the chemical and breaks it down. That amazing feeling when you were just enjoying is absolutely lost. So what does your brain want to do? Put another penny in the machine and get another ball. For many of us, the next ball comes in the form of foods that quickly make us feel good, of foods that provide an immediate rush of serotonin. That rush can come with a jolt of sugar. Sugar stimulates the release of serotonin. Insulin stimulates serotonin uptake into the brain, which in turn boosts our moods, make us feel better, or masks the stress, pain, boredom, anger, frustration that we might be experiencing in the moment. But serotonin is only one ball in the play. You have other chemicals fighting to send your appetite and cravings from bumper to bumper. To see how the whole picture works, think of these chemicals as part of a scale. When the chemicals associated with positive feelings, like serotonin or dopamine, are open, you are feeling like you're chemically high. But when they are down, you feel anxiety that sends you reaching for the foods, especially those simple carbohydrates that get you back to the chemical high. Knowing how your emotions can steal your desires to eat will help you to resist your cravings and ideally avoid them altogether. That's why we need to work on our mental health and emotional stability as well. Okay, so can I have a next slide, please? If I can just have a next slide about hunger. Yeah, you can shoot the whole slide on. Thank you. Right, so let's talk a little bit about hunger. So sometimes we interpret hunger as a difficult sensation that makes us feel anxious or on edge. A fridge full of food can make us feel like we are not a failure anymore, like we are prepared or are in control. Some say that chocolate never asks, it understands. You can and you eat, but you are never fulfilled because you are not hungry for food. You might experience hunger for love, acceptance, fulfillment, or affection. You feed yourself because you want to fulfill those unconscious needs, but it still leaves you with emotions and feelings not being addressed. And this leads to disordered eating, compulsive overeating, binge eating, and other psychological issues that contribute to weight gain. Meaning of hunger. This is quite a very important one to really perhaps check in for yourself. What does the hunger mean for you? Understanding hunger in the broader sense help us to see that it's not only about food and access to it. And the definition tells us that once the person's energy levels fall below a certain threshold, the sensation of hunger is experienced, which is the body's way of motivating the persons to eat again. Hunger is telling us that our body is running low on energy. When glucose falls down, we start to experience body cues that indicate hunger. We then eat until we feel full, and our brain releases leptin, appetite hormone, which makes us pleasantly satisfied. High levels of leptin tells our brain that there was enough food and a healthy person does not want to eat anymore. Very easy, too simple almost. However, with age, it becomes a little bit more complicated because food starts to fill different functions for us. Go into cinema, for example. You get popcorn. Watching a movie we associate with snacking. Eating with age starts to become to have a social and psychological function. I've mentioned the popcorn, of course, in the cinema. We eat automatically, mindlessly, and very fast. We sometimes also go out and feel the need to eat a large portion because of social pressures, or finishing the meal because we consider it the last supper, or we fear the waste. So psychological function is where we satisfy our emotions and feelings with food. Social, when, for example, we want to make a large dinner for the family because we struggle to show, we struggle to show love or and feel acceptance in other ways. So what also influences our food choices is appetite, which is the motivator to take food in. And interestingly, this is connected with mechanism of feeling relieved. Experiencing an appetite can be habitual. So the sensation of wanting to eat is a learned reaction to different emotions: anger, sadness, tiredness. Every emotion can trigger you for reaching out for food. Can trigger you reaching out for food. So understanding your past experience of food and eating can be beneficial for you to recognize how is your emotional eating. As an example, when you were small and you were sad and have been handed some food, for example, an ice cream, to compensate for parents not being around, or you experience extreme poverty when young, feeling of loneliness or restriction can trigger overeating. So remember that famine or restriction equals overeating, binging, disordered eating. And if that's your that's your experience, it's important to be aware of it and be able to work on that before you carry on with the bariatric pathway. Same thing kind of goes as well for diet. And studies tell us that experience of any diet heightens the production of cortisol in our body. So cortisol is the stress hormone, and which can definitely lead to general life dissatisfaction or emotional eating. So going on any restrictive diet can make us feel like we cannot, I suppose we feel so much pressure that we struggle to function in normal life. And studies tell us also that we can go on a diet and stay on it for at least 3 months, and then we fall back to whatever we were forbidden before. So it's important to also know those mechanisms. Okay, so what I wanted to kind of show you as well today is the kind of two different kinds of hunger. So that we've got physiological hunger, which is something that builds up gradually over time. It produces sensation of emptiness in your stomach, growling, rumbling, occurs several hours after a meal, disappears when satisfied or full, leads to eating for physical satisfaction, and you're able to eat variety of foods to satisfy it. So you don't usually turn to only chocolate or crisps. You're able to obviously eat anything that you kind of fancy or is around you or is available to you. And usually fullness starts to occur around 20 minutes from starting to eat. Eating is connected with satisfaction and fullness. So it's very much kind of that kind of simple functional satisfaction of hunger. Emotional hunger, on the other side, it's something quite interesting for us to observe. It appears suddenly. You usually experience it in your mouth. It is not connected to any other meals you have in the day. So, for example, you can have quite a good routine in the day, and then something happens or something triggers, not necessarily something on the day triggered it. It could have been something that happened maybe a week ago or something from the past, and you run for the cupboards. You go for chocolate, you go for something else, and you want to eat it and you want to have it in the here and now. Okay, and of course, it does not subside after eating something. So it is never something that we can fully satisfy with one thing. We always crave something. And if you experience that kind of constant craving, it's important to really kind of pay attention to that as well. and see, okay, what is it that I'm really craving for? If it's something sweet, am I craving for that kind of affection? Am I craving maybe something emotional there? Maybe my emotional need is not satisfied because I'm craving something sweet. When I'm craving something more crunchy with texture, for example, maybe it's worth to kind of have a think about, okay, am I actually quite anxious right now? Am I trying to kind of repress that anxiousness with food that has a lot of texture? Because remember, a lot of anxiety stays in our jaw. A lot of it is being held here. So we want to release it through the mechanism of biting. Okay. And definitely it is something, it's so difficult to control it. Eating usually, emotional eating is, when we emotionally eat, this is connected with feeling guilt, shame, and anger towards self. So you will go back to those questions. Why did I eat this? Why did I allow myself to have this food? Okay. So there's something very much around kind of beating yourself up for it. And also other things can trigger emotional eating. Sometimes, as you can see, we can eat with our eyes. And this is very interesting kind of concept, because if you are going around for a walk and you see a massive billboard with McDonald's and whatever is out there, in red colors or yellow colors, of course you're going to be attracted to that food. Obviously, the marketing people, they know what they're doing by using colors like that because they drag our attention. So we also need to kind of be very much aware of what really triggers our attention, or what are we exposed to. So if you're, let's say, if you're going on your social media, constantly seeing ads of food, of course you're going to keep thinking about it. So it's worth to kind of see, kind of review that for yourself. Okay, what is it I'm exposed to? Or can I be more aware of that? What exactly is sort of triggering my eating? The same things as well goes for portion control. That's why a lot of the providers you've been working with would be suggesting for you to, let's say, have a smaller bowl when you're eating, because it helps you to kind of see that there's that kind of visual illusion of there is a lot of food in a smaller sort of plate. So that's helpful. Again, what's interesting, what triggers emotional eating is memories. So when you're walking around, going back to our walk, and you smell wonderful bread, you walk by the bakery, and the memory comes back of your grandma baking bread. You go back to that kind of, how did that feel when you were younger? And that kind of eating can be triggered as well. But this is a very important thing where we start to be more aware of it. We can do quite a lot for ourselves. Okay. Again, climate can be something that triggers our emotional eating. Weather change, that's definitely a thing. So kind of being aware of that, and we know that obviously the colder it is, we want a bit of comfort, we want a bit of kind of soothing, so we'll be turning to foods that maybe are a little bit heavier. Of course, another thing is access to food or a lack of it. So when we have access to a lot of things, we might be going for it. We might be, piling up chips or crisps or, sweets and all that in our cupboards because it is available. The same things go for lack of it. If you're not able to get food for different reasons, you will be struggling to perhaps, feel like, you're satisfied. You always will crave more. The same thing with people who experience poverty. If you experience poverty, it's hard for us to feel satisfied for food, especially when you experience poverty when you were younger. You will constantly crave food and feel really dissatisfied with the amount of it. Okay, so can I get the next slide, please? So how not to overeat? Definitely listen to what your body is telling you. Eat mindfully and slowly. And this is an interesting thing I wanted to share with you today. That remember that our stomach has 3 settings. There's hunger, I hit food and I'm fulfilled and can't eat anymore, and I overeat. And this is very important to really pay attention as you are kind of learning for yourself to tune into the experience of hunger and satisfaction. And what else you can try? Clearly, as I said, I was talking earlier, emotional eating is not going to solve your problems or emotional issues. It will only add up to overwhelm. So yes, as we spoke earlier, try eat on smaller plates. It's the visual illusion for the brain to feel satisfied quicker. Try not to go shopping when hungry, and plan what to get as much as you can. Change the eating habits as well as your routine. Make sure you eat regularly, because when you start eating regularly, you can see then how the sort of emotional eating creeps in, and you can recognize it more and say, okay, well, that's my craving for a piece of chocolate or something else is actually, an emotional trigger, and that's okay. I can do something with that. Maybe I need to ask myself, what is it that I need in the moment? So try work on understanding your hunger and eat only until you feel full rather than until you feel uncomfortable. Because when you start to feel, say, really uncomfortable with food, and this is very important for bariatric surgery, again, obviously everything can fall apart, isn't it? So obviously making sure you eat the portion that you need to eat rather than kind of crossing the line. Okay? So emotions are yours and they are not to fear. So it's your internal system that makes you you and helps you to deal with these worlds that we live in. You need them and you need to address them more. And you would definitely benefit more to be in touch with how your emotional well-being is. This system warns you. It tells you about the reality you live in. It connects you to other humans. It can be interesting to listen to it, but not to open another chocolate bar. So again, listen to ourselves. So when we react to something, we experience in our bodies. It might be located in our stomach. For example, when you experience a stressful event, a lot of us would experience kind of a knot in our tummy. So for example, let's say you have to speak at a conference and your stomach turns into a knot and your emotions tell you to run away. So each emotion and the experience of it lasts around 1.5 minutes, so 90 seconds. So you will not fall apart when you allow yourself to tune into this experience. You can do so much with it. This is where self-care comes in. We need to start reacting compassionately to our internal experiences more and allow ourselves to acknowledge them. So ask for a hug, reassure yourself. Remind yourself that you are good enough at what you do. Call a friend, write a letter, go to therapy, enjoy some quiet time, all accordingly to what you experience. Crying as well is a beneficial thing to release the upset. So the next time you feel sad, upset, or even lonely, allow yourself to cry. Sometimes people have been told that crying is a weakness, or boys don't cry. Stop making a scene, you're embarrassing me. If you heard this as a child, I suggest you allow yourself to do more what feels best for you and work on accepting yourself. Imagine you miss being on your own because you are very tired and you get chips. Imagine you want to hug someone and you get a piece of chocolate. You need to rest, but you get a cheese sandwich. We serve ourselves substitutes of what we actually need. We bargain with ourselves because sometimes we tell ourselves we are not so important. We don't deserve to. I will deal with this myself. We start to feel selfish for taking ourselves or our bodies and minds into consideration. If we do not have in life something we want, we will reward ourselves with food. Can I get a next slide, please? Okay. And if I can have all the questions, please. Thank you. So answer these questions for yourself. Do you feel you've received enough of affection when young? Have you been listened to? Have you felt safe? Do you feel your boundaries were respected? Did you have boundaries at all? Did your parents set healthy boundaries? Have you received a comfort when you needed it? Did you have a level of responsibility that was beyond your age? Were you able to express your emotions fully? Did your parents tell you about the world and life when you were younger and how to deal with challenges? Did your parents have enough patience with you? Did you ever receive food when sad? Have you felt loved and appreciated? So take a moment to take in those questions. They're very deep and difficult ones. So let me tell you, if you answer no to any of these questions, then you now know the reasons of your emotional eating. Now it's about giving yourself a right to express your desires. Dreams, they are important. Put yourself on top of the list of priorities. Start telling yourself, I am important. What do I need in the moment? Maybe I need to cry. Lie down. I need to let go. Maybe I need to laugh with others. Maybe I need happiness. Maybe I need warmth of the hug, silence, appreciate myself, talk to a friend, go to my GP, take medication, get a divorce, feel the sense of being proud of myself, dare to be. Maybe I need pleasure. Maybe I need to ask for help. Maybe I need understanding or being understood. Maybe I need variety, sleep, creative activities. Maybe I need to express myself, express my sexuality, go for a walk because I enjoy it, not because I want to shrink my body. Maybe I need a new job, more people around, maybe respect towards myself and my body. Ask yourself what's needed. And if I can get a next slide, please. So to fully nurture ourselves, we need to ask ourselves a few questions. What can I do? What I have already? What I know? What I want? And what I like? And what do I really dream about? Because as I said earlier, sometimes all those unfulfilled things in our life can result in us turning to food for comfort. And we can absolutely look after ourselves a little bit better. And we need to be doing that. Comfort eating, emotional eating happens to every one of us. But we have a lot that we can do there. And it is something that we need to realize as well, especially in a journey for a bariatric pathway, for a bariatric surgery. Just so you know that you can have that kind of other type of support where you look at, okay, maybe I need to practice more self-care. Maybe you need to ask yourself where you are, what you can do for yourself. So look after yourself, and thank you for listening. If I can have a last slide as well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Milena.
You're welcome.
No problem. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and then I will just allow people of the panel to unmute themselves. That was really, really interesting, Milena. Thank you for that. We've got lots of questions and lots of comments while you were talking through. So I've got Nisha, I think. So I'll just ask Nisha to unmute for more live. We're going to sit on the panel today. Hi, Nisha.
Hi, Stevie. Thank you.
Are you all right?
Yes, you.
I'm all right, thanks. I think we've got Yulia.
Hi, everyone.
Hiya. We've got Twane. That's Twane to unmute.
Hello. Hi.
Twane. I think that's everyone, Jodie, that I'm aware of. Jodie, I've not unmuted you. Very important over there. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else that should be on the panel that I've not unmuted? If there is, just pop your hands up and I'll be able to see you on the list. Don't physically do it. I won't see that. There's too many people. You just do it on the I have no words today, sorry guys. On the emojis, that's the word. Right, so are the panel happy to introduce themselves tonight? So we've got a few different disciplines, haven't we? So I think everybody's aware of who Milena is. Obviously you've just spoken. Twana, are you okay to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Twana, so I'm a dietitian, and I have been working in a tier 3 service for many years, and I've supported loads of people through to have bariatric surgery. So I know you're in a long journey. It isn't a quick journey. So I really wish you well.
Thanks, Twana. And Julia? Can you hear me then, Julia? Are you okay to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm a psychologist at Salford Hospital. So I am the one who will be assessing you psychologically whenever you will be referred to our Salford team.
Thanks, Julia. Nisha?
Hi everyone, I'm Nisha. I'm a clinical lead and health psychologist at More Life. I've worked in the Tier 3 weight management service for over 5 years. Prior to coming to More Life, I was at Blackpool. So yeah, this is one of my really interesting areas, emotional eating.
Thank you. And Joe, did you need an introduction? I think everybody knows you, don't they?
Oh, you're very soft, Stevie.
Oh, sorry. Can we not hear me properly?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just not being loud enough. Jodie, do you want to introduce yourself, or do you think everybody knows you here?
I hope you all know me. So I'm Jodie, I'm the bariatric nurse.
Thank you very much. Right, okay, so there are some questions coming through, so if anybody's got any more, feel free to add them in. I'm just going to pop them out there. I'll focus on this psychological questions first while we've got Julia and Nisha and Milena here, and then I'll kind of diversify into the other questions if that's all right. If any of you guys see an interesting question that I've not seen, feel free to jump in there as well. So what are some of the things you might think psychologically are signs that you're not ready for surgery? I'll just throw that one out there. Who wants to take that?
Anybody? Nisha, Julia?
Okay, I'll take this one then.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be quite a few things, and I think that's why we do psychological assessment to identify what those challenges might be. And I think a very important thing to mention is that our goal is to get you to the surgery. And we have a psychological assessment, not to say that you can go to the surgery, but you can't go to the surgery. So it's not about that. We do want everyone to get to the surgery. And if in case there are any issues, then we'll work together to help you resolve those issues. So when it comes to those issues, I think emotional eating is quite an important one, because a lot of people have emotional eating, but there are different levels and extents to that. So when we have a psychological assessment, we assess that, you know, these aspects, such as if this person will continue these behaviors, will they be at harm after the surgery? Or will they struggle to go through the, you know, pre-bariatric surgery diet? So we assess these things, and it's very difficult to say specifically because sometimes it's very unique to people. But I think some of the things that we look at are, you know, are you able to stop eating when you are full? Because if there is no that ability, of course, having a surgery will make it a bit easier. But some people, when the drive is so strong, they will find ways how to go about it. And these are the people who end up later after the surgery gaining the weight back. So again, we assess these things on a very personal level because they're very personal to each individual. And I think if in case you have other mental health issues that you do not feel in control of, we would always suggest you to seek your GP or to seek any mental health services that you might had previous involvement with and ask for support. Because if you will have a really severe depression or anxiety or anything else, and you will not be able to manage it, that potentially can cause significant effects on the surgery. So that's where we might say that, look, we need to explore these aspects in a specialist mental health service before you're ready to proceed. So most of the times we will direct you to the service that can help you, or we will help you ourselves. But again, the goal is to get you to the surgery as safely as possible.
Yeah. And remember that emotional eating happens to every one of us. It's something that it is kind of everyone. I do it, you all do it, and it's absolutely fine. It depends, I suppose it depends on the complexity of the issue. And if it's something you cannot, soothe yourself without. So if you're turning to food all the time, because it is something, because you feel sad, because you feel anxious, because whatever else, then of course we need to take that into consideration, because that potentially can, really, obviously you can really struggle after having the surgery. It can really reverse all everything, after the surgery, and you can really have quite a lot of troubles with it. So this is why we're kind of talking about it beforehand, just so you know, okay, well, I need to maybe recognize a little bit more. So remember, emotional eating is important. That leads us to food, but anxiety sometimes can lead us away from food. So that's something also important. If you're not eating or eating quite a lot, that's both of those kind of spectrums are quite important to take in. So there is not a rule that if you have a mental health issue, you cannot go with the surgery. Okay. So depending of what you're doing, whatever is going, that's why Julia was saying it is such an individual thing.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I was going to say, with emotional eating as well, it's not always like the negative side. Sometimes you might be, for things like boredom, even like celebration, social eating. There's the positive side of emotional eating. It can lead to overeating as well. So just in what we try to do in our service as well, is just try to focus on a bit of both. Sometimes people are eating maybe out of habits, just boredom, and before you know it, might have eaten even though you've had your meal a couple of hours ago. So it's just looking at in terms of a spectrum, which end you might fall on as well. So yeah, just to add to that bit of the emotional eating.
Thank you. So there's quite a few people that are quite early on in their journey tonight. And some people are worried around the additional time that it would take to have support for their emotional eating or any kind of psychological support whilst on the bariatric journey. And what would your advice be there? Would it be to, if you feel like that's something that you need and you're offered, have it as soon as possible? A nod from everyone there.
Yeah.
Something that we see frequently in services is that people are quite reluctant because they think it will make their journey longer. So have you got any advice for those people?
I think when it comes to getting psychological support, I think people forget the word support. So I think it's normal for people to wait for bariatric surgery and feel like, okay, this is the thing that I really need. As soon as I'll have it, everything will change. We have unfortunately witnessed for quite a few times that bariatric surgery is not always that key to happiness and weight loss. Some people have the surgery, they struggle to lose the weight, or they lose the weight and then they gain it back. So this psychological support helps you avoid being one of those people who gain the weight back. So you might, be excited about the surgery, and having the support might delay the surgery a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is support and it is there for you, because we do have patients who gain the weight. We do have patients who struggle with excess skin to the point where they will say, you know what, I would rather gain the weight back than have all this excess skin. There are various issues, but this psychological intervention at the end of the day is support, and it is for you, so that you can safely go to the surgery and safely deal with the issues afterwards. So I think, as excited as you are, think for yourself. If you need that support, do let us know and we will support you, because at the end of the day, it's your well-being. It's not as simple with just getting the surgery and then me being happy.
So a slightly different angle here. Somebody said that they have polycystic ovary syndrome and they really struggle to feel full. What should they do in that circumstance? That's probably one for you, Twani.
Yeah, it could be a problem with polycystic ovaries where you might feel more hungry, and that's just the way that your body works. And just going sometimes back to the basics about eating, making sure that you're eating regularly, that would be really important, because when you start skipping meals, that's when you get overly hungry or start to overeat at the next meal. Other thing that's really important with polycystic ovaries is to move as much as you can. So there is really a big benefit in being active, and that doesn't mean putting your lycra on and going to the gym. It could be, cleaning the windows or doing some housework, going for a nice walk, doing some gardening. So it needn't be like a massive physical activity. But sometimes I guess what we talking about in boredom eating with polycystic ovaries, you could also ask yourself that question: am I really hungry, or is there some emotions playing a role here in my perceived hunger? And if I've just eaten an hour ago, then really it's not possible to be hungry again. So what else is going on? So I think asking yourself that questions might be a good way as well to kind of make sure you're not eating out of habit or emotion or boredom, or like rewarding yourself with something as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Twani. Does anybody else want to add anything there? No? Perfect. Okay.
Stevie, you're really soft again.
I mean, I'm so loud. I don't know why this is happening. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some of the best ways to prepare emotionally and psychologically for surgery? It's quite a broad question. Does anybody want to tackle that? Milena, sorry, you muted, aren't you, again?
Okay, so can you just repeat the question? Sorry, I just battling with my mute here.
Yeah, no problem. So what are some of the best ways to prepare emotionally or psychologically for surgery?
Well, definitely it's something to kind of be really mindful of, isn't it, in terms of, okay, what triggers you, isn't it, what is going on, and also I suppose review your relationship with food, what it is, what sort of changes are you making already? Are you eating because something else is triggering you, or are you eating until you feel full? Are you eating regularly? Is there something that comes in there that kind of triggers you perhaps to eat or away from food? So it's making sure obviously you get the right support. So what I would say is to kind of, if you need to work on your relationship with food, speak to a therapist, speak to a counselor, speak to the provider that you're with, and make sure that is addressed. Because if you are going into the surgery and then let's say you start to emotionally because something big happened in your life, everything is going to fall upside down, isn't it? And we don't want that for you. So it's making sure you get that kind of support system around you beforehand and address it beforehand. Yeah, so either it's therapy, either it's counseling, either it's obviously speaking to a provider. You can work with a coach, whoever else you want to do. Also, family is quite beneficial, but bariatric surgery is not a quick fix. Remember that. So we need to do quite a lot of work beforehand on our emotions, on obviously our well-being, before we carry on with it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? You just knocked it out of the park, all of you. Yeah, Nisha, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, no, I was just going to add to that in terms of, I think just having, if it is emotional eating, it's just looking at alternative ways to soothe your emotions without that food as well. So yeah, understanding your triggers, but making sure you've got some alternatives to that, because after surgery you won't be able to do that really. Just making sure you've kind of practiced using those and getting into a new habit with some of what you've tried to change as well.
Mm-hmm. to making sure there's self-care strategies that you've got in place. You know, as I said earlier in my presentation, you know, not going for a walk because you want to shrink your body, going for a walk because it has so many other benefits, going for that walk because you want to change the atmosphere, move your body if you can, of course. There's so many other movement, other exercises that you can be doing, anything really that you can be doing, going knitting, watching something fun, doing things for you, because you matter, you're important, remember about this. And again, we are here to support you. That's why we've got these sessions here, for all those questions, all those worries, and give them to us so we know how to support you best.
I just add in there as well, I think the biggest challenge for the group of people here, the group of people on our waiting list, is the delays due to the pandemic. I know there's an awful lot of questions coming through saying, what is the actual waiting time? Anyone who's about to be referred would not have their surgery this year. I know that much. The difficulty we have is we have 6 surgeons. We have very limited capacity for theatre space at Salford Royal anyway, we always have. And now with the pandemic, we are one of the services that have not resumed elective surgery yet. And it's really getting quite hard now because it's been such a long time where we haven't had this activity happen. And as you can imagine, it's quite a bottleneck. So until we know exactly what we're going to be given, we can't work out those waiting times. So it's very difficult for people. So I think at this stage where you're considering bariatric surgery, you're in a process where hopefully you're going to proceed and be given funding by the NHS to have your weight loss surgery. That in itself is a lovely achievement, because that means that it's not a case of if you're going to have surgery, it's more of a case of when you're going to have surgery. So I think psychologically, your mindset to this has to change like no other cohort of patients before you, because the pandemic has put these horrible delays there. So when I set up a mailing group for the people that were cancelled due to COVID back in July 2020, realising that things weren't getting better and we were having more being shut down and redeployed all the time, a lot of the questions that came through were the fear of weight gaining, and then finally getting to that surgical date and being told, oh, you've put on far too much weight since you were referred. So these issues are something that people are worried about. So I think more than ever, the meaningful changes you're making now to either maintain weight or lose weight are really important. So those lifestyle changes, the education, I think at one point, sometimes the efforts of the dietitians, the psychologists, and yourselves were almost like, oh, well, it's just a hurdle before my surgery. Actually, it's definitely not. This is probably the most important process you're going to have, because of the coping tools you're going to need for the delays that are before you. And so I know that sounds a little bit bleak, but realistic expectations are really, really important. Otherwise, you're always setting yourself up for a fall, and that can obviously lead to weight gain as well. So I think there was one other question that I saw before, where they were talking about medications. So I don't know if the panel have spotted a few of those questions. So we were talking, so if I just start off and then see what the others have to say. So antidepressants that work well for you are extremely important. So when you have bariatric surgery, we don't expect you to stop taking these. And after surgery, we expect you to resume them. Anything less than a 5p piece, or that can be crushed or put into a liquid, will be. And this isn't the case for all of them. Some certain medications with certain psychotic conditions absorb in part of the small bowel that the bypass, meaning the bypass would not be suitable for you. So I saw in one of the questions, or if I have a psychological condition, does that mean I can't have surgery? Absolutely not. There's lots of factors to it, and when you meet our medics, we'll go through those. There's another sort of cause of contention, and it all sounds sort of negative, but it's not at all. But people who talk about weight gaining drugs, and there are drugs out there, and there are antidepressants out there that are classed as weight gaining. But let's be very clear what weight gaining means. You don't take the tablet and then put on fat. That's not what it means. What it means is it's an appetite stimulant, and it's a mean appetite stimulant, because you don't really feel like you've been having that much more in terms of the volume of food, but because you are having that bit more quite regularly because of the medication you're on, that can equate in time to weight gaining. And so that's what those medications actually mean. So some medications might need to be looked at, and our medics that you meet, and probably the part of the team that you're in now as well, and your GPs can look at those things beforehand. But I have had people that have had, so for example, quetiapine is one of the drugs I'm thinking about, who've stayed on that because it really worked so well for them after surgery, and have worked with it because they recognise that that's something that this drug might be doing for them. They factor that in, and again, that's why almost a robotic regular eating pattern is so important to get into before surgery, so it isn't a challenge to you, especially that first meal of the day that I think lots of people really struggle with. So I'll hand over to the panel now if they've got anything around drugs to talk about.
In our service, we do look at drugs as well, as Jodie said. So our physician, she will look at drugs in the MDT. So if there is anybody that's on not like a sort of, or maybe what Jodie said, like a drug that might lead to weight gain or might be a bit of a barrier to what they're trying to do, she would review that, write to the GP and suggest alternatives. We've done that quite a lot recently, you know, every MDT if there is and it's going to help optimize the client's journey and their medication, then we would look at that in the tier 3 service as well. So that means that by the time you get to sort of tier 4, you would have made some of these changes as well. So you don't have to wait till you get to tier 4 or to surgery to make some of the medication changes.
And just quickly cut in, another question came up. What are these tiers? What are these tiers we all talk about? So a tier 4 service is a service that offers surgery. We also have a tier 4 medical weight management team that follow you up yearly for the rest of your life. And they sometimes also do the pre-bariatric work with perhaps more complex cases. So that's the tier 4. Tier 3 is what is the only weight management service that is allowed to refer you to us. So you have to be in a weight management service or a tier 3 weight management service to refer on. So for example, a tier 2, which we might be Slimming World, Weight Watchers, they couldn't refer you for surgery. So it's something that the GP will have done for you at some point and referred you into the service you're in now, so that you have the option of bariatric surgery as part of that work.
Thanks, Jodie. Thanks, everyone. So an interesting question.
Maybe we cannot hear you. Mm-hmm.
Oh no, this is very annoying for me. Sorry, guys. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody's asked a really interesting question. Is there a correlation between post-bariatric surgery and alcoholism? I think it's quite useful to touch on alcohol and what it means for your alcohol consumption post-surgery. So who wants to take that one?
I think we would typically say that you need to really start reducing your alcohol before surgery. After surgery, this alcohol is just absorbed quite differently into your body. So you absorb it differently. You could get drunk quite easily, which of course sounds fantastic, but it could have risks associated to that. There's also that extra calories in alcohol that's in a liquid form, so it's so easy to absorb that calories. So we want to keep that calories down as well. So in most cases, we would advise people not to drink any alcohol for about 12 months after surgery. That's just kind of to get you settled in and make sure that you don't have excess calories coming in from that. So of course, if you're going from a 12 pint on a Friday night to nothing after surgery, that transition is quite hard. And like Jodie said, if you start practicing these changes that we want you to do beforehand and slowly start to cut down on that alcohol, it is much easier afterwards. So it's not about just the volume of alcohol. So, you know, just a small tot of gin is still not advisable. So it's not just the volume, it is actually getting rid of the alcohol for about 12 months after. Jodie, I don't know if that's kind of the advice you would.
Yeah, so actually this is under review at the moment. So some of you may have remember when Dr. Summers was on our panel, and there has been a lot of research done about what happens to people after bariatric surgery. So one of the things was, is food an addiction? And do people switch their addiction? So do you start gambling, or do you start drinking lots of alcohol, or any other kind of sort of habitual behaviours that replace eating, if eating was a habitual behaviour before? So there is evidence that could suggest that. But for more with alcohol, it's the danger of it. So for most people, they don't particularly have a pleasant experience with alcohol after surgery. It can cause the dumping syndrome. It is a poison, and your liver is going to struggle because things go through so quickly. You used to have a stomach that would hold it for 2 hours. Now it's going very quickly into your system, and that can potentially be quite dangerous, to the point where I know early on when services started, they actually had a few examples of death where binge drinking activity, that's quite a common place in British society, really put the liver, really damaged the liver so severely that people went into organ failure and died. I'm not trying to scare you and say this is what's going to happen to you, but this is how seriously we take it. So at one point we would say, right, you must abstain from alcohol for 6 months after surgery. Now we advise people that there's good reasons you should abstain if you can completely, or that you have it in absolute moderation, and understand. So I've had a few people, so they'll go, well, I'm not bothered, I just don't feel like drinking, but I'm going to my daughter's graduation, or I've got this wedding, so I'm probably going to have whatever there. And I always say, okay, but practice at home, because the worst thing is if you try alcohol for the first time of something you'd be really looking forward to, and then you're very unwell and you don't enjoy it anymore. So in moderation, it should be fine, but it's just making sure that you're not going back to habits. If you were somebody who binge drank before, or drank to get drunk, it's just not safe. And we all know we shouldn't do these things anyway, but if alcohol is something that you have regularly for that purpose, you're going to need to challenge that, because after surgery, there's more and more evidence to say how unsafe this is. And smoking as well. If you don't smoke, don't start smoking. Okay, so smoking is something that contributes to ulcers and strictures around the surgical area after surgery. We actually give you medication for up to 2 years to try and prevent your own gastric juices causing these problems, to keep you as safe. And hopefully one of the in the people, so less than 3% of patients can have complications, so we try and minimize all complications long term. But yeah, we have seen some sad cases where people cannot stop smoking and they get recurrent ulcers, and again, that can be so dangerous, because none of us want an ulcer in our stomach, and we certainly don't want an ulcer in a stomach that's now the size of an egg. So these are things you do need to think about, and that's another just key point. Prior to surgery now, it used to be that in the bypass particularly you had to be a non-smoker. The surgeons have now said that they want everybody to be a non-smoker prior to surgery, so that's something else just to think about. And if you vape, get that down to a 0% nicotine vape.
Thank you. So somebody's asked, what are the possible psychological post-op barriers that somebody might experience?
When it comes to the difficulties that people have after the bariatric surgery, so one quite a big one can be excess skin, because people want to lose the weight so much, they don't like their body, and they just focus on the weight loss. And some people don't actually realize that they may have a lot of excess skin. Now, there are people who are dealing very brilliantly with that, but for other people, that still affects how they see themselves. And so this is something that I would really advise you to think well and prepare yourself how you would deal with having a lot of excess skin. Another thing that I think is quite significant that people deal with is the way how they see themselves. So some people attribute happiness to weight loss. So they think, well, if I'll get the bariatric surgery, I will lose the weight, I will be happy. If only that was this easy. We see a lot of thin people, a lot of slim people, a lot of skinny people. Are they all happy? No, because reality is that weight doesn't have anything to do with happiness. Now, sometimes we will lose a lot of weight and we will start living our lives differently. And that may bring us a lot of happiness. But weight in itself, you know, if it was this easy, GPs would be prescribing weight loss for happiness. But it's not as simple. So we do have people who think that if they will lose weight, they will be happy. They lose the weight, they're not happy. They lose the weight, but they still don't like themselves. They still don't like their certain character traits. They still don't like the life that they have. And then what we hear them say is, well, at least then I used to be a happy fat person. Now I am unhappy floppy person. So when it comes to having these expectations of weight loss equals happiness, I would really encourage you to think outside of this, because if you lose the weight, but you don't enjoy life, if you don't go out to do the things that you want to do, how happy will you actually be? So I think having these healthy expectations, and really, at the same time, do all overweight people, are they all unhappy? No, that's not true. So I think if you could find that happiness within without losing the weight, you will be much, much happier after you lose the weight, because it's something that's not really connected to the weight. And I know some people will think, oh no, but if I lost the weight, I will actually be happy, I will do this and that. But routine kicks in, we lose the weight, but we still get to go to work, we still get to save for the holidays, we still get to save for those dresses and beautiful clothes that we thought will be, changing every single day. So again, that's why we do that psychological assessment, so that people would understand that actually, as big as weight loss is, it's not overpowering and it doesn't guarantee happiness. And when some people, when they don't feel as happy when they lost the weight, then they say, well, I'll just continue eating. What's the point? And another of the challenges is that they might lose the weight, then it stops and the weight is being maintained. And people might say, oh, but I wanted to lose more weight. Oh, I'm so disappointed. Why did this happen? It's my fault. I shouldn't have the surgery. And they start gaining the weight back. So having that positive self-talk within yourself is really, really important. And then again, we have people who will lose a lot of weight to the point where they will be so scared to gain any more weight that they will stop eating altogether. So that's where we go a little bit closer to the eating disorder side. But again, that's why we have psychological support there to provide you support with.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of, that's why we're kind of bringing this session here for you today around emotional eating, because it's such an important issue. It is, again, something to prepare you also after the surgery, because when we emotionally eat or overeat, and obviously emotions trigger our eating, there is the risk of dumping. And if that is something that, and that's why we obviously want to inform you of, that, you need to start looking after your well-being and looking after your relationship with food, and that kind of recognizes emotional triggers. So then when the surgery happens and you recover, you start to kind of get used to sort of, eating differently, that kind of those triggers don't mess up your journey. Okay, so you can look after yourself a little bit better. And I suppose that there's always something positive in kind of the the long wait in a way, because you've got more time to spend some time, reflect on, work on, again, your emotional well-being. And of course, we are coming out of the whole kind of pandemic, isn't it? And still it's happening. So kind of giving yourself, obviously, a lot of kind of, space, a lot of time, a lot of nurturing, because you do need it, especially right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think the psychological side in all our lives, it's really hard to tackle. And when Milena, when you had that slide up with all those questions to ask, I felt like crying straight away. I think they're things that we put in boxes that we don't like to open, and they're things we don't always like to acknowledge, and I think it's really difficult. They're things that people haven't even spoken to their husbands or wives about. It's deeply personal, and it's not really about food. It's about you as an individual, and us as individuals, us as humans, are, you know, our absolute frailty, and being okay with that, and addressing that in some way could really help progress you during this waiting time, for sure, but also for after surgery as well. Because there's so many positives, so many things to look forward to. But if you have that horrible mindset that doesn't allow you to acknowledge the happy things and what you achieved, that puts yourself down, that locks into guilt and anxiety, it can be a real struggle. And there's a lot of work with surgery, calming your mind, knowing that things that perhaps progressing with this stage is hard, and you're having difficulties with that. You need to go back, and you need the kind of that very almost microscopic detail of how you eat, when you eat, what you're doing, learning the hard way sometimes with surgery. But lots of people before surgery, they're ready, they know what they need to do, they understand what they're doing, and they're ready to embrace it, and that makes it so much easier. And I think if too much is put on sometimes, the whole diet side, I hate the word diet, I'm sure everybody sat here does, but really the two things go very much hand in hand. And Twain is a dietitian, I'm sure you see this all the time, that you can be given ideas about food and education around food, and that's great, but it can be locked in, and we do get that sometimes. We do get a lot of people that will go, do you know what I was never really even aware of, or that honest with myself with, is the portion size. I never really thought of my portion size as particularly big, because that's just what all their family did. It's just what everybody around them did. So why was that wrong or not right, and so on. So after surgery, those portion sizes are really key, and you'll be quite surprised lifelong the sort of portion size we should have. Our society is not set up to support anyone to lose weight, and that's why obesity is the pandemic that no one really wants to address, and they're going to pour money into campaigns to make things look prettier, when really if they poured money into our psychological services, we'd probably get a lot further. That's my opinion.
I agree with Jodie. You know, we live in an environment that's got all these fantastic foods, and I don't know about you, but I have to walk 15 minutes maximum to get to my nearest shop, and I can buy there whatever I want. So the environment is so important, and I think thinking about this is just taking the guilt away from why we are where we are at the moment. I do want to say that as well. Sometimes we feel very guilty and think it's our fault alone. So I'm not saying you're completely faultless maybe in this, but kind of thinking of the bigger picture and this obesity environment where we live. Food is everywhere. Food is marketed so well. I don't know about you, but you know, 10 o'clock just before I want to put the tally off, and this Marks and Spencer's adverts come up with all these fantastic meals, and immediately I think, oh, I want to have something to eat now. So, you know, our senses is stimulated in all sort of ways to just want to eat. These foods are made to taste really nice, and they're made to eat really quickly because they might be soft and they might just slip down your throat. And it's not, some foods aren't made to make you feel full. And that's how, like, maybe places get you to go back for more and more and more. So we have to just kind of realize that it's a tough environment out there. We're not set up to be healthy weights. So we have to be even more careful with what we choose and how much we eat.
We've actually got Ryan, who I think's got his hand up and wants to ask a question. So Ryan, if you want to unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask the panel a question.
Yeah, so my question is, what advice would you give the others in the group about basically preparing them not just mentally but emotionally for the preparations for it. I know it was touched on during the actual discussion at the beginning. What I can tell by some people's faces that they're still a bit confused on like what's been discussed and the questions that have been answered. But it's just like the little steps rather than the big changes that I think I'm asking about. Like, what little changes can people make now, since we're still in that limbo of things, that they can make for preparation to move on to those big steps?
I can try answer this question. So can you hear me okay? So the thing that I found helpful for my patients was that when they actually tried to practice post-bariatric diet before they even had the surgery, because some people practiced it and then they thought, oh, wow, that is really difficult. I can't actually do it. So this allowed them then to really look into that and to really say, okay, I really need to work on that to get myself ready. Or I really need to speak with my family and ask for their support, such as, don't offer me food whenever I'm not asking, or let's all, decrease the portion sizes, or even to seek some support, some psychological support. But in many cases, people have actually said that I got already myself into this mentality where I'm already eating small portions, I'm already mashing the food and I'm eating these little portions, and I feel comfortable with that. So when they get to the point of having the surgery, it's really easy for them. So I would probably advise you to practice this diet and see how you feel. Can you stick to it? Are there any frustrations? Do you notice that you became very irritable? Did you notice that you actually wanted to eat more? And observe these effects, because they will guide you, and they will, guide you to seeking appropriate support, whether it's from family, whether maybe from doing a bit more reading about how to battle with certain cravings and certain difficulties. But that would probably be the one advice that most of my patients found really helpful. So that is, practice the diet. Well, when I say diet, you know what I mean. It's post-bariatric way of eating before you actually go for surgery. So that would be my advice.
Does anybody else want to add anything in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I suppose, I don't know which service you're in, but within your tier 3 service as well, you should get support there as well, whether it's this sort of psychoeducation or one-to-one support, depending on the issue. Just raising that with the practitioner or the relevant person that you're working with. But also sometimes you have support, your own peers within the group, within the tier 3 service as well. So I'll just say as much sort of identifying some of the underlying issues when you're in the tier 3 service, working on those to make the changes, lifestyle changes, or if it is emotional eating, then just so trying to tackle as much of that as you can within that year prior to your referral to tier 4 and for the further psych assessment as well.
And an achievable goal. Someone just put in, oh, my problem's bread. So don't not eat bread, because then you'll really miss bread. So you might just need to be thinking to yourself, right, well, and right now I know bread's a bit of a problem. So it might just be that you kind of look at your choices of what type of bread you're having, or how many meals would you involve bread in, and maybe you're just putting it to one meal a day that would involve bread. Those kind of realistic things, so you're not just setting yourself up for a full something that's really manageable that you can put into achieve quite quickly and feel quite good about, and just stick with that. So for lots of people, they stop fizzy drinks, and then they kind of lose quite a bit of weight. They didn't realize that, for example, Diet Cola is used in all of the advertising because it has more caffeine and it's more addictive. So if you stop drinking fizzy drinks or wean off fizzy drinks, if that's something you're really into, you might be surprised, because they advertise them so badly, you know, absolute zero sugar, zero, there's nothing in it, it's just water. Well, it isn't really, and it's definitely something you can't have after surgery. So that's quite a good one to try and cut down on or cut out. So yeah, and definitely that meal pattern. I'm always saying meal pattern, but for me, it's just such a saviour when somebody quickly manages to have those the breakfast, the lunch, and the dinner, because in those initial phases, those first sort of 4 to 12 months, if you've got that, you know you're going to get slow release sugars from the foods you can have and feel good and feel strong. You've had a major surgery. For some people, they're really surprised how sapped in energy they are, but then very quickly they get like a boost of energy and they want to do things that they struggled to do before, and that's lovely. That's when you can really ride the crest of the wave, because suddenly you're more active, which is driving down that fat again, using your excess fat for energy because of the 3 regular meals that you're having, with sipping drinks as well. So have you tried not being thirsty for a day? I really need to I'm going to challenge myself to do that, because I am always thirsty. I never think, oh, I'll just carry around a bottle of water with me. So hydration is really important. You'll never be able to pick up a pint of water and just knock it back because you're thirsty. So wherever you go, you should be going with a bottle of water, your mobile phone, your keys, and be trying to sip that throughout the day. So there's little sort of quite robotic things that you don't have to challenge, oh, I don't want to do this. You just have to say to yourself, well, I'm going to need to do this, and try and put those in. So just make them things that don't seem awful to you. Some people can't tolerate water, they just don't like it, they never have. You might find your taste buds completely change and you never want a cup of tea after surgery again. So there's things that will change. So it might be for now that you're just going around with a sugar-free cordial, and you might be doing that after surgery as well. So just think about things that you can do in your lives, things you can put in with your family as well, you know, get them involved, all the support you can get. And I like to think we had a obesity awareness, childhood obesity awareness day, and I was the only voice there. They gave me 3 minutes on bariatric surgery, so I was like, don't worry, I'm not going to do bariatric, we're not going to do bariatric surgery on children. However, you can't ignore the adult obesity population and how them having bariatric surgery, taking on those lifestyle changes, could impact on the next generations. And I think that's a really important message to think about as well. You are going to be the advocate in your home for what a diet should look like, you know, what a normal kind of portion size is, and balanced plates, and the choices that you're making in the supermarket. Things are going to change, and if you do that as a family, everyone can benefit. If anything, the dog might become overweight because it's eating so many leftovers. But then, to be honest, lots of dogs get walk loads now more than they did, because people are feeling more excited, they go for further. So there's lots of positives to come, but there's no reason why they can't start in little ways, meaningful ways now.
So Jessica has got a hand up. Are you happy to ask your question? You just need to unmute yourself.
Hiya. I did ask the question, but what it is, I'm not an emotional eater. I'm more of a stop eating and I drink instead. And I drink and I drink and I just don't think about food if I'm stressed out or emotional. So I'm the opposite. I don't want food. I want to drink instead. And I'm sort of trying to think, when I'm stressed out, how can I sort of stop myself wanting to stop eating? Well, no, that doesn't make sense, does it?
It does.
But if you get what I mean, I just sort of, I wanted some advice on how to learn to eat in a normal way instead of stopping food and drinking.
A question. So when
I can just drink brews and water or fizzy drink at the moment and I'm fine. I don't have to eat all day if I'm stressed out.
Yeah, and I do think this is so important in terms of kind of depending on really reflecting on, okay, what's happening kind of in a broader spectrum in terms of your mental health. Because as I said, food, obviously kind of emotions can bring us toward food or away from food. It sounds what you're doing as well is using drink to fill up your tummy, to feel that comfort. So it gives you something, gives you that distraction. So it's important maybe to have a look at, isn't it? You know, okay, what's happening for me emotionally, what's bringing me to food, and what brings me away from it as well, to kind of see, okay, is there something that I can work on? Because obviously having a lot of fluids can also obviously can be quite problematic post-surgery as well, depending on what exactly are you're drinking and so on. So perhaps, you know, speaking to obviously people that you work with, the providers that you are with at the moment, and seeing if there is anything that can be, you know, provided in terms of support for you.
Right, thank you very much.
And I would also like to answer your question, just to add something for what Milena said. So these kind of habits, when people stop eating altogether, or when they replace food with drinks such as water or alcohol or fizzy drinks. So this is one of the things that we look for when we do psychological assessment. And post-surgery, you are not, you know, the food capacity is much smaller. So if you already have a habit of not eating much, potentially you may be putting yourself at risk after the surgery, because then your appetite will decrease. So if with a decreased appetite, you add on top not wanting to eat food, you may get malnourished, and that can be very dangerous post-bariatric surgery. So I think if you could speak to the dietitian, and if you could really try and focus on having regular meals, because I think people get so scared of calories that they will be happy when they don't feel hungry, and they say, oh, well, you know, I've been drinking water or tea or coffee and I didn't consume any calories, how amazing. The danger is that in the evening, you will be so starved, you will eat twice or even 3 times as many calories as you would have if you would have been eating throughout the day. So you don't want to put yourself in this place where you are ravenous and where you will just, you know, attack that food, whatever that food it is, whether it's healthy meal or whether it's chocolate or whether it's, you know, and you probably do it very quickly. That means that by the time you realize you are full, you will have already overeat. So it's all about having the balance. And I get it that when we are stressed, we may either, as Milena said, go to food or go from food, but it's all about trying to find that balance. And I think speak to your dietitians, and maybe, you know, seek psychological support. If not, you know, go on to Google. It has, you know, and just Google how to deal with avoiding food or how to deal with cravings. And, you know, right now, social media, there are a lot of dangers there, but there are also people who can share their experiences for what worked for them. So maybe just going through some points and trying to adjust them to you and seeing if it will actually work or not.
Thanks, Julia. Perfect. I think we're bang on time there, so it's 8 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. I know that there's been so many more questions that we've not actually had a chance to answer today. I've popped in there the Facebook group, which is basically there for you guys to support each other. It's a peer support platform. Nobody will be there to answer your questions in terms of anybody from Salford Royal, but that's a space, that's a private group where you guys can go and chat to each other and kind of learn from each other as you go along this journey. And that's also a place where I'll post the information for the next sessions that are coming up. So if you are wanting to attend further sessions each month, that's where I'll just post the information so that you can attend and what the subject will be for the next session. Thank you to everybody on the panel, and with special thanks to Milena. That was a fantastic presentation, so thank you for that. And as always, Jodie, thanks for being the fountain of knowledge.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jodie. And we'll see you all next month.